After my father ignored me for years, he tried to steal my gaming PC for his twin son's birthday. I sold it for $2,600 before he could throw it away. I'm Lucas, a 17-year-old guy, and I need some perspective since my father, 43, and his fiancée, Lori, 39, are upset about something I did last week. For background, I should explain how I ended up living with my father in the first place. My parents separated when I was just 2 years old. My mother reared me on her own in a separate state. Throughout my youth, she worked 2 jobs, and we never had much money. But we were okay. She had to take my father to court for child support when I was 4 because he stopped paying. After that, he mailed the checks, but I only saw him 4 times in my life. He never phoned or sent birthday cards. My mother informed me he had begun a new life, and I accepted it. 4 years ago, my mother became ill. Cancer. She struggled for 15 months but died 2 days after my 14th birthday. I didn't have any other family. My mother's parents died before I was born, and she was the only kid. So, Child Services located my father, and I was forced to collect my belongings and go across the country to live with him, his girlfriend of 4 years, and her twin boys, all of whom were 9 years old. When I arrived, the entire situation seemed strange. My father resided in this lovely mansion in the suburbs. Lori worked in marketing, and my father operated a car dealership. The twins, James and Matthew, were in 4th grade. My father put me up in the spare bedroom, and that was pretty much it. No greeting, no attempt to get to know me. Just here's your room, and supper is at 7 o'clock. Lori scarcely glanced at me for the first month. The twins were merely youngsters, so they didn't really care either way. I kept to myself. I went to school, returned home, completed my schoolwork, ate dinner with them in quiet, and then spent the rest of the time in my room. That first year, my father and I only had about 6 serious chats. It was like having roommates who barely tolerated you. I acquired a job around 15 months ago. A community center 4 blocks from the residence offers after-school programs and summer camps. They required assistance with their computer lab because half of the equipment were outdated and frequently broke down. The director recognized my proficiency with computers from school and offered me $17 per hour to work there after school and on weekends. The nicest part was that they provided me food on evenings when I worked late and let me complete my schoolwork when things were sluggish. I accepted the job instantly. During the academic year, I worked around 25 hours per week, and in the summer, it was closer to 40. I saved practically everything because I didn't have any costs. My father provided me a tiny stipend for clothing and school supplies, but that was all. After 10 months, I had saved around $4,500. I spent around $2,500 on my room. I purchased a suitable workstation, a comfortable chair, a second-hand gaming PC from an internet seller, a monitor, a keyboard, a headset, and several games. I also purchased a small refrigerator since I was weary of coming downstairs late at night and running into Lori in the kitchen. She never said anything, but I could tell she disliked having me around. The twins spotted the new arrangement right away. They often knocked on my door, begging to play games. I did not mind at first. I purchased a second controller and some games suitable for 10-year-olds. My rule was straightforward. They could play anytime they wanted as long as I didn't use it. If I required the computer for homework or to play my own games, they had to go. This worked nicely for about 2 months. Then, one afternoon, I returned home from work and discovered Matthew weeping in my room. James stood next to him, appearing guilty. There was Coke all over my keyboard. The whole thing was sticky, and half of the keys didn't work. I'd told him 100 times, no food or drink near the computer. I did not shout or anything. I merely ordered them to leave and modified the regulation. From then on, kids could only use my computer while I was around to oversee. I wasn't going to risk them damaging anything else I'd paid for. They instantly raced to their mother. Lori came to my home that night and told me I was acting ridiculous. She explained that the guys were simply youngsters, and accidents happen. I stated that I understood, but it was my property, and I had the right to establish limits. She didn't like the response. The next day my father summoned me into the living room. He and Lori sat on the couch. He advised me that since I had such great goods, I should relocate the gaming PC to the living room so that everyone could enjoy it. I said no. I purchased it with my own money and keep it in my room. My father became annoyed. He accused me of being greedy, and that if I could afford all of this, I must have a lot of money. He then dropped the bomb. He told me that I would have to start paying rent from now on. $350 per month, plus $150 for utilities and another $150 for food. Total, $550. I knew it was rubbish. I looked it up later, and in our state, parents cannot charge young children rent unless there is a legal agreement, and even that is difficult. I called his bluff right then. I urged him to draft a formal contract, which I would submit to a lawyer to ensure it was legal. My mother had a lawyer who dealt with her estate, and I still had his phone number. My dad's cheeks turned crimson. He said nothing for a minute. Then he merely instructed me to leave the room. Lori grinned. 3 weeks went by. My father didn't bring up the rent issue again. But then the twins' birthdays rolled around. They were turning 12. Lori and my father inquired what they wanted, and both boys stated that they wanted a gaming PC like mine. My father assured them he would get them one. This is where the trouble began. My father definitely did not do any research. Gaming PCs are pricey, particularly pre-built models. He must have worried after seeing the pricing online. Also, the GPU I had was from an earlier generation, and the current ones were either out of stock or ridiculously priced due to scarcity. My father visited my room 4 days before the twins' birthdays. He stated he couldn't find an acceptable price for a PC and suggested I give mine to the boys as a birthday gift. He suggested it would be a good gesture and help me connect with them. I said no. I paid for it, and I'm not giving it away. He became angry. He said that if I did not give it to them freely, he would steal it while I was at school and throw it in the rubbish. He said that it was his house and his rules. Then he exited my room. I did not sleep that night. I knew he was serious. The next morning, before school, I photographed my PC and uploaded it on Facebook Marketplace. I priced it 20% more than what I spent since the GPU had increased in value. By lunchtime, I had received 3 offers. I missed my final lesson, went home, packed everything, and met the buyer at the community center. He paid me $2,600 in cash. When I arrived home that afternoon, my room was barren. The desk remained, but the PC, monitor, keyboard, headset, and all other components were missing. I placed the money in my backpack and headed downstairs. My father wasn't home yet, but Lori was preparing supper. She inquired where I was after school. I stated I was working. She did not push it. That evening, during supper, my father returned home with a large wrapped box. The twins were quite delighted. However, when they opened it, it was only a Nintendo Switch, not a gaming PC. They appeared bewildered. My father made up an explanation about how the Switch was better for kids their age and that they could have a PC when they grew up. The youngsters were disappointed, but they accepted the situation. After supper, my father came to my room. When he spotted the vacant desk, his expression shifted. He inquired where the computer was. I told him I had sold it. He lost it. He began ranting at me, asking how I could do that, accusing me of ruining the twins' birthday, and calling me selfish and cruel. I just shrugged and claimed he had informed me he was going to throw it out, so I felt I may as well be paid for it. He couldn't disagree with the reasoning, but he was enraged. The twins discovered my empty room the next morning and inquired as to what had transpired. I told them I sold my belongings. They began weeping. I felt awful for them because nothing was their fault. They were merely youngsters who desired what their mom and dad had promised them. My father and Lori did not talk to me for 3 days. They spent a lot of time in their room, having loud chats that I couldn't hear. I just continued to work and stayed out of their path. I'm writing this now since I'm not sure whether I did something incorrectly. My father claimed I could have just given them the PC and been the greater person, but I purchased it with money I earned, and he threatened to burn it. Was it wrong for me to sell it rather than hand it over? The twins are upset, and Lori continues mentioning how I destroyed everything. My father is scarcely speaking to me. I don't have anybody else to ask, so I'll ask here. Is there something I did wrong? Update 1. I didn't expect anyone to reply to my post, and I certainly didn't expect the response I received. Many people told me I did the right thing and that my father was acting inappropriately. Some of you inquired about my mother's estate and if I had access to funds from it. I'll explain that here since it's important to what happens next. When my mother died, she had a life insurance policy via her employment and some funds. Her lawyer explained to me that everything had been put into a trust, and I would have access when I was 19. I was 14 at the time and still trying to digest the reality that mom was gone, so I didn't pay attention to the details. I just felt there was money somewhere I couldn't get yet. The lawyer gave me a folder containing paperwork and instructed me to keep it secure. I put it in a box beneath my bed and essentially forgot about it. Lori came to my room after reading my article and begged to speak with me. This was the longest chat I've ever had with her. She sat on my desk chair as I sat on my bed, and she said she owed me an apology. She stated that when my father informed her that I was moving in 4 years ago, it was the first time she had heard of my existence. She stated my father never mentioned having a son. Nothing happened when they first started dating, or when they moved in together. She found out 3 weeks before I came, when child services called him. She stated she was outraged with him for hiding something so major, and they almost split up over it. She admitted that she took out her fury on me and apologized for it. Then she informed me she had no idea my father had threatened to throw out my computer. She stated that if she had known, she would have stopped him. She stated that the twins revealed to her that they had poured Pepsi over my keyboard, and she understood why I amended the rules. She argued my father was wrong to make I give them my belongings. She also informed me that she had previously purchased the twins a Switch for their birthdays before my father promised them a computer. She said he made that pledge without asking her and then expected her to assist him figure it out. She said he panicked when he saw the pricing and devised a scheme to grab mine. She stated that she disagreed with it but did not stop him, which she regretted. She stated that she wanted to set things right. She offered to pay me the difference between what I paid for my PC and what it would cost to acquire a new one now to compensate for the mess she and my father had caused. It was a good deal, but I told her I didn't need her money. I had already profited from the sale, and all I had to do now was wait for prices to drop or discover another nice offer online. She seemed relieved. She asked if we could start over and attempt to improve our relationship. I said yes. I didn't have strong sentiments for her either way, but I did appreciate the apology. My father still hadn't said anything to me. He ignored me at meals and went for work before I was awake. Lori usually stated he felt humiliated, but I'm not sure whether that's accurate. Lori informed me a week later that her parents were hosting a large family Christmas celebration, to which I was invited. I hadn't met either of my father's or Lori's families throughout my 4 years there. My father never brought me to any family occasions. I assumed this was because he didn't know how to describe me to others without revealing he'd been a deadbeat for the most of my existence. I wasn't sure I wanted to go, but Lori said it would be beneficial for me to meet everyone. She described her family as large and boisterous, but kind. I consented primarily because I had nothing else to do. The event took place 3 days after Christmas at Lori's parents' house. There were at least 60 persons present. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, relatives, and pals. Lori introduced me to everyone. She made it clear that I was her boyfriend's son and a wonderful child. Everyone was friendly. A number of the younger relatives were about my age, so we ended up playing games in the basement. One of them had the identical gaming headset I used to have, and we spent about an hour discussing builds and specifications. Lori summoned everyone to the living room. I assumed it was for food, but instead, she took out her phone and began reading. It was my Reddit post, read out in front of everyone. I wanted to disappear, but the room fell quiet, and people began to respond. Lori's father inquired whether it was true. My father stated it was more difficult than that. Then my father's elder sister, whom I had only met that day, claimed it didn't seem complex at all. She stated it seemed like my father was attempting to coerce me into giving away something I purchased. Then other folks joined in. Lori's brother claimed my father was out of line. My father's younger brother, who evidently reads Reddit, claimed he saw my post and assumed the father in the tale was a jerk until realizing it was his own brother. People were chatting over one another. My dad attempted to defend himself, but it just made everything worse. My father's mother, who I believe is my grandmother, approached me amid all of this and inquired about my mother. She said she met my mother years ago and thought she was gorgeous. She inquired how I was doing and if I was all right. I assured her I was okay. We spoke for a while, and she told me some things about my mother that I had never heard. Apparently, my mother and grandma had chatted briefly several times throughout the years, but my father had no idea. The entire evening was hectic. My father spent much of it bickering with his brothers and Lori's relatives. He once walked into Lori's father's office and refused to leave. Lori's brother, David, went to check on him and returned laughing. He stated, "My father was on his laptop, writing his own Reddit post to defend himself." David thought it was funny and urged my father to submit it. My father asked on the Am I the subreddit whether he was wrong to expect his son to share valuable stuff with his girlfriend's children. He described the scenario from his point of view. He claimed he took me in since I had nowhere else to go. He said I had money from my mother's inheritance and was acting entitled. He said he only wanted his family to get along, and I was making things tough. The post was broken apart. People described him as egotistical, domineering, and a bad parent. They pointed out that I purchased my own items using money I earned. They said he was attempting to take credit for being a dad when he had disregarded me for the majority of my childhood. My father sat in the office for hours, refreshing the website and reading the comments. He did not even come out for supper. I left the gathering at 9 p.m., with Lori and the twins. My father stayed behind. He didn't get home until after midnight. The following several days were stressful. My father seldom spoke to anyone. He went to work, got home, and went directly to his room. Lori tried to talk to him, but he ignored her. I've never seen him like this. Part of me feels horrible that he was humiliated in front of his entire family. But another part of me believes he brought it upon himself. He made decisions and is now coping with the repercussions. I'm still living here, and things are weird, but I now have Lori's family. Her brother David gave me his phone number and said to call if I ever needed anything. My grandmother calls me once a week to check in. The cousins added me to the group chat. I'm not sure what happens next with my dad, but I don't feel as alone as I did before. Update: things have grown worse. My father's conduct has become increasingly unpredictable, and there has been a significant development that I did not anticipate. A few weeks ago, my father tried to ground me. It was my birthday week, and I had planned to go to an arcade with some school friends and a few of relatives I'd met at the Christmas celebration. I took the day off from work and was looking forward to it. My father entered the kitchen when I was eating breakfast on my birthday morning. He said I didn't take out the garbage the night before, which was unacceptable. I honestly forgot since I worked late and arrived home sleepy. I apologized and said I would do it when I came back from the arcade. He stated it wasn't good enough. He stated I was grounded for 2 weeks and couldn't go. I knew it was about control, not the waste. I told him he couldn't ground me on my birthday because I forgot one chore. He said he could do whatever he pleased in his home. I ordered him to leave me alone and walked back into my room. He followed me and continued talking, but I simply put on my headset and ignored him. He eventually departed. I went to an arcade. When I went home that night, Lori grabbed me aside and said she told my father he was being foolish and that I wasn't grounded. She stated I could go about my life normally. My father said nothing to me about it, but I could sense he was upset. The next day, my father made another Reddit post. Another post. This one was about his teenage son's disdain and refusal to obey family rules, and he sought to ground him, but his girlfriend sided with the son, rather than him. He made it seem like I was an out-of-control child when, in reality, I had only forgotten to take out the garbage once. People in the comments trashed him again. They pointed out that this was the same parent as in the gaming PC article, and he definitely had difficulties. Some individuals informed him that he needed professional aid. Others claimed his girlfriend was wise to side with me. My father erased the message after a few hours, but screenshots had already circulated. David gave me a screenshot, claiming that my father was in a downward spiral. He suggested I stay with him and his wife for a bit if things were too unpleasant. I thanked him but stated I was okay for now. My dad and Lori's relationship began to deteriorate 2 weeks after my birthday. I don't have all the specifics, but I could hear them arguing late at night. One disagreement was over money. Lori was upset because my father spent a lot of money on something without informing her. Another point of contention included his family. Lori said his brother called him out for his actions, while my father responded his family should mind their own business. Then one night, I got home from work and heard them arguing in their bedroom. It was noisy. Lori yelled that she was weary of him attempting to control everything. My father yelled back that she was undermining him in front of his kid and making him appear weak. She claimed he made himself appear weak by behaving like a child. The twins were downstairs, watching television while pretending not to hear. The battle concluded with the doors slamming. Lori came downstairs with the twins and said that they were heading to her parents' place for the night. She asked whether I wanted to come, and I responded I was all right. They departed. My father came downstairs 1 hour later. He seemed weary. He inquired if I ate dinner, and I said that I grabbed something at work. He nodded and returned upstairs. I didn't see him for the rest of the night. Lori and the twins returned the next afternoon. But things were changed. Lori hardly looked at my father. She prepared supper but did not sit with us to eat. The twins remained silent. After supper, Lori informed my father that they needed to talk, and they returned to I went to my room and tried to ignore what was going on. But, at bedroom. Approximately 10 o'clock, I heard the front door bang. I peered out my window and watched my father get into his car and drive away. He did not return that night or the next morning. Lori was on her phone a lot, messaging someone. When the twins inquired about their stepfather's whereabouts, she said that he needed some space and would return shortly. He eventually returned 3 days later. He looked awful. He had not shaven, and his clothing was disheveled. He headed directly to the bedroom. Lori followed him in, and the two of them spoke for quite some time. When she came out, she appeared to have been sobbing. Lori invited me into her living room that evening. She took me down and informed me that she and my father were splitting. She stated it wasn't working and she needed to consider what was best for herself and the twins. She stated that she was intending to move out with the boys and get her own apartment. She asked what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure what to say. I didn't want to stay with my father, and I didn't think it was my place to accompany Lori. She stated I was invited to accompany them, but she understood if I preferred alternative arrangements. She said that David had previously volunteered to let me remain with him and his family. I informed her that I needed time to think about it. She claimed that was all right, and nothing would happen right away. My father stayed in the bedroom for the majority of the next week. He called out ill from work. Lori grabbed some luggage and returned to her parents' house with the twins. She promised to return later to get more of their belongings. I contacted David to see whether his offer was still available. He stated unequivocally. He stated that his wife Sarah was on board, and they had a spare room. He said that his daughter Emily was my age and would be delighted to have someone else in the house. He told me that I could move in whenever I wanted. I packed my belongings that weekend. I didn't have much: clothing, a laptop, a few books, and a folder with my mother's documents. I left the furnishings because it was included with the room. My father came out of the bedroom when he heard me move. He inquired where I was heading. I said that I was staying with David for a time. He questioned why. I informed him since Lori was going and I didn't want to be here alone with him. He did not argue, he merely nodded and returned to his room. David picked me up that afternoon. My father came outside while we were moving my belongings into his car. He inquired whether I was certain about this. I said yes. He suggested we chat first. I claimed there was nothing to discuss. He just stood there till we drove away. I've been at David's place for 4 weeks now. Lori texted me to say she had officially moved out. She acquired a little apartment closer to her workplace. The twins are adapting. She stated that my father attempted to contact her several times, but she has not responded. David's family is kind. His wife Sarah is a teacher, and their daughter Emily is 1 year younger than me. They treat me like a member of the family. David assisted me in setting up a new workstation in the spare room and even sourced a desk from a junk store. I'm still working at the community center, and my grades remain good. I'm not sure what will happen to my dad. Part of me believes he'll attempt to contact me someday, but I'm not ready to talk to him. David says I don't have to do anything I don't want to do and may stay here for as long as I need. For the time being, I'm trying to concentrate on school and job and avoid thinking about everything that has gone wrong. Update 3. I hadn't planned to publish again, but so many people had messaged me asking for an update that I decided to make one last piece to wrap things up. I still live with David and his family. It's been 8 months overall. They have made it plain that I am not a burden and may remain for as long as I need to. I give them $250 per month for rent now that I work more hours at the community center, but they initially refused it. I insisted since I don't want to be perceived as taking advantage. Sarah helped me improve my academics, and I'm on schedule to graduate next year with good grades. Emily and I got along great. She enjoys photography, and I occasionally assist her edit images on my laptop. David showed me how to change the oil in a car and fix a leaking faucet. My father never bothered to show me the basics. Lori moved to a larger apartment a few months ago. I see her and the twins every other weekend. We enjoy gaming and watching movies. The twins are doing well. James is now enjoying soccer, while Matthew is beginning to play the guitar. Lori appears lighter, if this makes sense. She grins more. She began dating someone new, a man who works in her building. She introduced me to him last month and he seems okay. The twins like him. The divorce was completed last month. Lori has primary custody of the twins, and my father takes them every other weekend, although he only shows up about half of the time. Lori claims he makes excuses regarding work. The settlement was not beautiful. Lori's lawyer was harsh and my father didn't have a strong case considering all that had transpired. My father reached out to me twice. The first time happened approximately a month after I moved in with David. He arrived to David's residence uninvited. David answered the door and informed him I did not want to see him. My father begged to speak with me nevertheless. David said, "No," and closed the door. My father waited on the porch for a few minutes before leaving. The second occurrence occurred 3 weeks ago. He visited the community center when I was working. Mrs. Turner, the director, noticed him chatting to me and came over to make sure everything was well. My father stated he just wanted to chat. I assured Mrs. Turner everything was great and we could chat outdoors. We sat on a bench in the parking lot. He looked better than the previous time I saw him, but he was still worn out. He apologized for everything. He admitted he made mistakes and was working to improve. He said that he was seeing a counselor since the court mandated it as part of the custody arrangement. He stated he wanted me to return home. I asked him why. He argued that because I was his son, I belonged to him. I told him he didn't treat me like a son for the first 14 years of my life and just took me in because he had to. He said that wasn't fair. I assured him it was perfectly fair. He took a different strategy. He added that when I reached 19, I'd need help obtaining my inheritance, which he could assist with. He stated he wanted to be engaged in my life in the future and that excluding him now would complicate matters later. That sent off alarms. I thanked him for stopping by and said that I needed to get back to work. He attempted to continue chatting, but I walked away. When I arrived home, I informed David about our talk. He felt it was strange that my father brought up the inheritance. We decided to contact the law company that manages my mother's trust. David accompanied me to the appointment. Mr. Hansen, the lawyer, was the same person who helped my mother put things up. He's semi-retired now, but he still manages the trust. He verified that my father had phoned the business several times over the previous 7 months seeking information regarding the trust. He wanted to know how much money was in it, when I'd have access, and whether he could be recognized as a financial guardian while I was still a child. Mr. Hansen stated that he turned down every request. He claimed the trust is unbreakable and my father has no legal right to any of it. He added that when I reach 19, I will meet with him and a financial consultant to go over everything and open accounts in my name. He stated that my mother made certain that it was secured so that my father would not be able to access it. Hearing it made me realize that my father's sudden interest in reconciling was not motivated by a desire for a relationship. He merely wanted access to my mother's money. David asked Mr. Hansen if there was anything we could do to prevent my father from causing difficulties. Mr. Hansen added, "As long as you keep the paperwork safe and don't sign anything your dad gives you, you'll be fine." He gave me his card and told me to call him if my father tried anything more. I have not heard from my father since our talk at the community center. Lori claims he's been irregular with the twins. He either cancels visits at the last minute or fails to show up altogether. When he sees them, he spends half of the time on his phone. She claims that the lads are losing interest in whether or not dad shows up. I'll turn 18 next month. David and Sarah are organizing a little celebration with some of my school classmates and cousins. Emily is baking a cake. It'll be my first true birthday since my mother died. I was promoted in the community center. I am currently operating the computer lab full-time and offering basic coding workshops to children on Saturdays. Mrs. Turner informed me that she will be sending me a college recommendation letter, considering programs in computer science and possibly business. Even without the bequest, I have enough savings to last the first year. I don't think about my father much anymore. I occasionally worry if he'll get his act together, but I don't lose sleep over it. He made his pick. I miss my mother every day. I wish she was here to see how everything came out. But I think she'd be pleased that I discovered folks who genuinely care about me. David and Sarah treat me like I am their own child. Lori and the twins remind me of the family I never had growing up. My cousins and grandma visit on a regular basis. When I reach 19, I plan to read whatever letter my mother left me with trust. Mr. Hansen stated that there was one, but it was sealed until I reached the legal age. I'm nervous, but yet interested. For the time being, my main priorities are finishing school, accumulating money and finding out what happens next. I don't have all the answers, but I'm in a better place now than I was a year ago, when I was living in that home with people who didn't want me there. That is it. I don't believe I'll update again until anything significant occurs. Thank you to everyone who left comments and messages, it helped more than you realize. Now, let us go to the following story. Story 2. My brother-in-law lost his job and wants to reside at my place for free. He's been lazy. He is a filthy slob and my wife is on his side. I, 34, was married to Emily, 32, for 8 years. We had been living in my house, which I had acquired before we married. It was a respectable 3-bedroom house in a pleasant area. Emily's brother, Ryan, 28, was forced out of his apartment around 6 months ago because he couldn't pay the rent after losing his job during the epidemic. His assets were entirely depleted, and he had nowhere to go. Emily requested that he remain with us temporarily until he could get back on his feet financially. I was apprehensive at first since I treasured my privacy and personal space. However, after Emily begged with me and explained that Ryan was family and had no other alternatives, I decided to let him remain in our spare bedroom for a few months. Ryan had moved in with only a couple suitcases of goods. For the first several weeks, everything was fine. He had stayed to himself, cleaned up after himself in the communal spaces, and had been actively looking for work. However, after approximately a month, Ryan's conduct began to change. Instead of looking for work, he had started spending more time at home, lying about and playing video games. His bathroom habits had deteriorated to the point that there were pubic hairs everywhere, urine stains on the toilet, and the bathroom reeked of his foul body odor at all times. He had also started consuming all of our meals without contributing anything. I politely mentioned these concerns with Ryan several times, but he always answered dismissively, promising to do better but never following through. Emily had originally taken my side in these things, believing that Ryan ought to respect our house and take his job search seriously. However, after a few months, she began to make excuses for his lethargy and messiness, claiming that he was simply going through a difficult period and that I should be patient with him. By the 4th month of Ryan's stay, I'd had enough. Not only had his filthy conduct continued, but he had begun inviting strange people over without permission, blaring loud music and video games all night, and even vaping indoors, leaving the house smelling like a nightclub. I had to put my foot down and tell Ryan that he needed to get his act together and start looking for work, or he would have to find another place to live. This resulted in a major blowout confrontation between Emily and me. Emily had shockingly taken Ryan's side, saying, "What's the big deal? He's just having some fun after going through a rough patch. Why are you being so uptight and cruel to my own brother?" I was astounded that she was justifying and enabling Ryan's complete lack of responsibility or respect as a guest in my home. When I refused to back down from giving Ryan an ultimatum, Emily issued her own. "If you kick Ryan out, I'll leave with him. You will have to pick between us." In that instant, I understood my marriage was already finished. Emily's willingness to abandon her marriage vows and return home rather than allow her bum-loser brother walk all over me demonstrated her true values. Her family would always come before me, regardless of how insulting or inappropriate their behavior was. Then I took the tough decision to inform Emily that if that was her preference, then be it. Ryan would stay, and she would go, not vice versa. I wasn't going to let them push me out of my own house, which I had owned before to the marriage. Needless to say, this resulted in World War II between Emily and I. She had called me every name in the book, including selfish, uncaring, domineering, abusive, and more. She accused me of preferring brick walls over your wife and said I would live to regret wrecking our marriage over it. She had hurriedly packed her bags and rushed off, planning to remain with her parents for the time being. However, in her wrath, she had neglected certain critical documents and emotional objects that were meaningful to her. A few days later, she sent Ryan over to retrieve her remaining stuff. I have to admit that in that moment, I was tempted to use her belongings as a bargaining chip to get Ryan out of my house. However, I had taken the high road. Ryan had not been denied any goods, and he had obtained everything Emily desired. As he departed with her belongings, he told me that I would regret my choice, and that she was the finest thing that had ever happened to me. In the 2 months since I had begun the formal process of divorcing Emily, she had continued to put pressure on me to keep Ryan in my house, claiming that he had nowhere else to go and that forcing him out would wreck his life. However, I declined. Ryan had brought this position upon himself with a lack of drive and disregard for limits. I owe him nothing. My soon-to-be ex-wife could let her bum brother mooch off her if she wanted, but he would not be residing in my house any longer. Ryan eventually found a new place to live after I stood firm in my decision. However, this circumstance had caused significant harm to my marriage. Emily had made it apparent that she would always prioritize her brother above me. So, Reddit, I refused to let my lazy, disrespectful brother-in-law continue to live in my house rent-free, even if it meant the ruin of my marriage. I had to decide between condoning Ryan's worthless behavior and losing my wife. I don't think I was the terrible guy at all, but I'd want to hear some other viewpoints. Update 1. I realize it's been a few months since my previous update, but there's a lot I need to get off my chest. What I'm going to describe may appear strange and ridiculous, but I vow on my life that every word is true. After the events of my previous piece, in which my marriage to Emily self-destructed due to her helping her lazy bum of a brother Ryan. Life had been rough, but I was attempting to move ahead. Emily's divorce processes were already begun, but she insisted on allowing Ryan back into my house before agreeing to any settlement. Of course I declined, having been pushed too far by Ryan's filthy behavior and disregard for my house and regulations. Ryan had ultimately found a new apartment after I forced him out, but I was still responsible for paying rent there in order to meet Emily's requests and get the divorce completed quickly. I had been focused on my job, trying to immerse myself in it to distract myself from the agony of my marriage dissolving for such an asinine cause. Emily's unwavering loyalty to her worthless brother over her spouse. I had been revisiting all of the battles and insults in my head, her calling me selfish and nasty for merely seeking basic respect and responsibility in my own house. Part of me questioned whether I was the bad person after all, for allowing my ego and stubbornness to destroy an 8-year marriage. Maybe I should have just tolerated Ryan's nonsense to make Emily happy, but another part of me understood her priorities were entirely incorrect, and allowing Ryan's loser lifestyle would just exacerbate the situation in the long run. In any event, I had attempted for several months to simply go on and accept that my marriage had ended. I'd become accustomed to having the home to myself again, without having to walk on eggshells around Ryan's filth and scents. I had begun making house modifications and renovating to my own style, something I could not have done without Emily's assistance. However, approximately a month ago, something unexpected occurred, reopening the can of worms. I had been out grocery shopping when I ran into an old college acquaintance named Ben. Ben and I were great friends in university, but we grew away when we began our professions and he married and had children. After exchanging some basic catch-up chit-chat, Ben had cautiously asked me, "Hey man, I have to ask, are the rumors true that you and Emily split up because you kicked out her brother for being lazy?" I had been surprised that mine and Emily's private marital issues had seemingly become public gossip, but I had figured it was a small town and these things tend to spread like wildfire when people divorce. So, I clarified to Ben that sure, it was really the circumstances that led to our parting. To my amazement, Ben expressed incredulity. He then remarked something unexpected that I had never considered. "Dude, what if I told you the story? You think you know is only scratching the surface? That things are way more messed up than you could ever imagine." I had prodded Ben for further information, but he was first hesitant to share anything, claiming he didn't want to disseminate unproven allegations. However, when I pushed and reminded him of our previous trust, Ben consented and began describing something that, if accurate, called into question all I believed I understood. According to Ben, he had a close friend named Chris who had known Ryan since high school. Though Ben didn't know Ryan well, Chris had told him several stories about Ryan being a deadbeat loser over the years. Borrowing money from friends to support his sedentary lifestyle, mooching off women, you name it. According to what Chris informed Ben, Ryan sponging off of me and Emily was no accident or coincidence. Ryan and his friend Chris had devised a carefully thought-out long-term strategy. According to the narrative, approximately a year ago, when everything was going well in my marriage, Chris went to a party and caught eyes with Emily. According to Ben, Chris was immediately drawn to Emily's beauty and decided to pursue her, although knowing she was married to me. Ryan owed Chris a large quantity of money, thousands of dollars, from previous debts and escapades. Chris had been hounding Ryan for money, threatening him with trouble if he didn't pay. That's when Chris devised a strategy. He would get Ryan to pursue effectively ending my marriage to Emily. If Ryan could infiltrate our family and gradually turn Emily against me, ultimately generating a wedge that would lead to our divorce, Chris would have the opportunity to worm his way in and pursue the newly single Emily for himself. In exchange for Ryan's attempts to end my marriage, Chris would forgive the massive debt that hung over Ryan's head, thereby releasing him of the burden. It's a win-win for the two jackals. I listened to Ben's narrative with incredulity and disdain. Ryan could not possibly be such a bad person. Was he intentionally working to sabotage his own sister's marriage so that his sleazy buddy could have a shot with her? But Ben maintained that everything he was telling me came straight from Chris's mouth. And the timetable appeared to fit nicely. Ryan began mooching off Emily and messing up when Chris first met her and fell in love. Ryan's demeanor quickly changed to that of a nasty, lazy slob. According to Ben, Chris had been constantly providing Ryan advice and directions on how to gradually turn Emily against me over time. Little by little, I was made out to be the evil person, too tense and unkind for merely seeking basic obligations and respect in my own house. Emily was continually criticizing me for having unrealistic expectations of Ryan. It all sprang from Chris's fascination with my wife and desire to manipulate his way into a relationship with her by destroying my marriage in the process. They had accomplished their aim with Ryan's assistance as an inside man, chipping away at Emily's affection for me. Hearing all of this was like getting hit in the belly repeatedly. For months I tortured myself, wondering whether I was the one who had unjustly placed my home over my wife's own flesh and blood brother. But if Ben's discoveries were accurate, Ryan and Chris had orchestrated a long-planned scam. Even more painful than the treachery itself was the thought of the inevitable toll this revelation would have inflicted on Emily herself. To understand she had been used as a pawn by her own brother to undermine her marriage, all in the hopes of setting her up for Chris to finally sleep with. Ryan and Chris's vile breach of trust and deception was appalling. I spent the following 3 days in an emotional tailspin, unable to focus at work as these horrible truths occupied my mind. I prodded Ben for any more information he could supply, including how reliable a source his friend Chris was for this. While Ben conceded Chris was a little dodgy at times, he argued Chris could not have concocted a tale this detailed and well-timed. Finally, I decided that I needed to get to the bottom of this, no matter how terrible the reality might be. I vowed to address Ryan personally. If I could get him away from Chris's possible influence, I might be able to get Ryan to finally admit everything. I wrote Ryan asking if we could meet for a talk, and to my surprise, he accepted quite fast. We had agreed on a quiet cafe near his new location for the meeting. When I arrived, Ryan was waiting with the same arrogant expression and contemptuous body language he usually had. "All right, man. You said you wanted to talk," Ryan replied as I sat across from him. "What's on your mind?" I took a long breath, preferring to be direct rather than skirt the issue. "I know everything, Ryan, including the plan you and your buddy Chris devised to sabotage my marriage." Ryan's smile vanished as soon as he heard my words. His eyes had widened in amazement and worry, giving me all the evidence I needed that what I had learnt was correct. "I don't know what you're talking about, man," Ryan had blurted out unconvincingly, unable to establish eye contact with me. "Don't even try to deny it," I said firmly. "I know exactly how your scumbag friend Chris became fascinated with my wife Emily after seeing her at a party. And I know everything about the twisted agreement you two struck." Ryan remained silent, moving uneasily in his seat as I recounted the facts of their arrangement. "Chris promised to forgive all of the money you owed him if you could effectively insinuate yourself into our family and gradually turn Emily against me over time, causing a schism between us until our marriage fell apart. Chris might also pursue Emily, who is freshly single." Ryan's lack of resistance and denial told me everything. His attention eventually shifted to the table and he could no longer look me in the eye. In that moment, I felt a powerful combination of fury, disdain, and grief. "You're a real piece of work, Ryan," I spat out, struggling to keep my voice down in the diner. "Betraying your own sister, sabotaging her marriage just so your loser buddy could have a shot at getting with her. Do you have any idea how messed up and cruel that is?" Ryan had finally started muttering some garbled responses about owing Chris money, needing a place to stay, and getting it over his head with Chris's manipulation. But it all seemed like sad explanations and justifications to me. Save it. I'd cut him off. This was one of the most heinous, despicable betrayals I could possibly fathom. The saddest thing is that you exploited Emily as a pawn in your sick little game. I had considered if I should tell Emily the whole truth about her brother's actions. Part of me wanted to shield her from the sorrow of finding that her own sibling had actively sabotaged her marriage for his own selfish reasons. But another part of her felt she deserved to know the entire scope of Ryan's heinous crimes and treachery. In that moment in the cafe, with the truth fully revealed between us, I decided to shut Ryan out of my life, regardless of what happened with Emily. I stood up from the table and said, "You're done, Ryan. I don't want to see or hear from you again. If you even come near me or try to contact me, I'll make sure the full truth about what you did is plastered all over this town." Ryan sat there, totally deflated without his signature smile and nonchalant attitude to hide behind. As I turned to exit the diner, he had finally found his voice. "You'll regret this." And when I cut him off right away, feeling furious and disgusted. "If you or your degenerate buddy Chris ever comes near me or Emily again, you'll wish you had never been born." With that, I stormed out of the diner, still feeling a slew of emotions. Hatred for Ryan, disgust at Chris's depravity, and torment at Emily's manipulation by her own blood without even realizing it. I had determined that Emily needed to know everything, no matter how unpleasant. Perhaps understanding about the circumstances will finally let her see the manipulation she had been exposed to. I had asked Emily if we could meet in a public area since I had something very essential to talk regarding the termination of our marriage. To her credit, she consented without objection. We had met in a quiet cafe, and I could instantly sense her fear and unease. As quietly as I could, I began telling her what Ben had told me about Ryan and his friend Chris's plan. She initially responded with surprise, unwilling to believe her brother was capable of such brutality and deception. But when I put out the jigsaw pieces, the date, and the particular information, her countenance gradually changed. By the end, I could see it all coming together for Emily. Ryan's persistent prodding to take his side against me. His seeming fixation with intruding himself into our marriage and living circumstances, as well as his advice that I was being unfair in my attitude toward his lack of accountability. It had all been a well-planned attempt to push Emily and me apart, all in service of Chris's twisted fixation and dealings with Ryan. Emily's eyes welled up with tears as she realized the unpleasant reality. To her credit, she made no attempt to justify or rationalize Ryan's behavior. I believe she knew, as I did, that this was a new low in depravity that couldn't be explained or excused in any manner. She immediately tried to reach Ryan to confront him, but he ignored all of her calls and messages. She eventually informed me that she felt utterly ill to her stomach. Sick of Ryan's nasty, selfish attempts to undermine her own marriage, and sick of seeing how horribly she had been misled and exploited as a pawn. In that instant, I saw the lady I had fallen in love with all those years before. The nice, kind-hearted individual who would never intentionally harm someone. Emily had been an innocent victim of Ryan's lies, just like me. Despite the sorrow of our marriage's collapse, I couldn't stay angry or resentful of Emily after that chat. If anything, I was relieved that she, like me, had seen Ryan for the wicked viper that he was. We had spent a long time talking about everything that day, re-examining her interactions with Ryan during his visit to our house through a fresh lens of understanding. So many of his words and behaviors that had previously been benign or equivocal suddenly took on a new, ominous significance when examined in light of the facts we now knew. Emily had made it apparent that she had realized how incredibly wrong she had been in allowing Ryan's dreadful actions toward me. No more excuses. No more justifications. She received it. We both determined that day to do whatever it needed to permanently remove Ryan's cancer from our life. Emily, like me, was sickened by Chris's perverted fascination and participation in all of this. On some way, we had reconnected because of our shared contempt for the two rascals who had abused our marriage. Emily and I maintained an open channel of contact throughout our divorce process. While we both believed our marriage was too broken to repair, there were no residual resentments or bad blood between us, which helped tremendously. We had agreed to break off all contact and communication with Ryan permanently, refusing to allow him worm his way back into our life or make any further excuses. He had made his terrible decisions and could live with the repercussions. Regarding his scumbag friend Chris, we had decided that if he ever attempted to contact or pursue Emily in any manner, we would not hesitate to seek police assistance and file restraining orders. His warped infatuation and entitlement towards Emily had already gone too far. In any event, given how terrifying this entire experience was, I'm just glad Emily and I came out on the other side with an unusual feeling of clarity and boundaries reinstated. While our marriage may be ending, a tremendous weight and load has been removed off both of our shoulders. We no longer have to live with the rage, uncertainty, and self-doubt that came from being gaslit and manipulated by those two filthy sociopaths. The truth has helped us reclaim our self-esteem and value. As we part ways and begin new chapters, I believe we are both motivated to pass on the hard lessons we learned here, such as recognizing the warning signs of poisonous personalities.